pleasure to be here with you all today. I hope you've had some great sessions so far. I'm going to be helping take you through a little bit of information on what we're seeing as the major trends around the employability gap in Europe, looking at the data that we have from all the various stakeholders that interact with our platform. I want to start off by just giving you some insight into what we're seeing from the general data and statistics out there in the marketplace. Some of this won't be particularly surprising, but will help to set the kind of context for what we're seeing as the key challenges across Europe today. If you look at the state of unemployment across countries, which clearly varies country by country, but what we see is a general trend that the lower the level of educational attainment that you have, the higher the impact that we see in terms of unemployment metrics. And it's particularly notable for those who have the equivalent of less than a high school diploma or who have only been to high school but haven't gone to some kind of college or university type degree. Now, that said, of course, the percentage isn't the whole story. It's not just about securing a job or any job. It's also about securing a career of choice, particularly when you're making a long-term investment in your educational journey. You want to make sure that it's leading to something that you feel has been worth that time and effort and resource cost to secure the kind of outcomes that you're seeking. Now, if you look at what's happening in the world of work and you look at the risk of automation, the pandemic has really accelerated trends, particularly around technology automating jobs. There's a McKinsey chart, which will come up in a second, which shows that where there are significant impacts to people who tend to be in the lower end of the income spectrum, and are also tend to have the least formal education. These are more manually orientated jobs, jobs where the impact of automation is quite high because it's relatively easy to automate some or all aspects of those roles. Those who are the least vulnerable to the impact of automation tend to be those who are on the higher wage spectrums, who are more educated, who have perhaps more investment in skills. And a lot of those are in the world of digital and technical domains, managerial positions, and so on, or specialist roles. And part of the challenge that we're going to face from a global perspective is how we actually help people move from those areas that are most susceptible to automation into roles where they actually have an opportunity to fulfill their career path and be successful in their roles. And if we look at where we see that emerging job opportunities, it's really all about where people are going to be requiring digital skills. If you look at data from the World Economic Forum, we see that the fastest growing jobs over the next 5 years are all in areas around digital and technology. And you'll be able to see that on the slide. We have data analysts and scientists, we have AI and machine learning specialists, big data specialists, digital marketing and strategy specialists, process automation, and so on. On the right-hand side, we also have, you can see from the Microsoft data, that there is a significant focus on the digital job capacity around privacy and trust, around cybersecurity, data analysis, cloud data roles, software development. There's a huge level of expected growth. We have about 51 million jobs a day in those roles. The expectation based on this Microsoft data is that will grow to around 190 million over the next 5 years. So there is actually a very positive outcome in the sense that we can see that while there are lots of jobs that are at risk of automation, there are also lots of jobs that are being created, new roles that never existed, certainly when I was going through my educational journey, that are recognizing the new technology, the new skills, the way we're transforming and digitalizing businesses around the world, that are actually really in-demand skill sets. And in many cases, companies are also struggling to hire those individuals because there simply aren't enough people in the marketplace that have those relevant skills. That will become so relevant over the next few years. Now we move on to look at the Global Skills Report. This is a report that Coursera produces globally every year. We pull from the data of our 87 million subscribers on that platform, and we start looking about What do we see at a country level? What are the kind of the skills profile? How well do those countries compare to other countries around the world? And there's a very clear correlation between the level of skills that we see within a country and the level of economic output that that country has. The more at a country level that there is an investment in skills and those skills are developed, the higher the level of GDP we tend to see on a per capita basis. And there's a logical correlation for that, because as you have more skill sets, you have more highly educated individuals, it leads to inward investment, it leads to collaboration, innovation, and it leads to competitiveness in the various industries and sectors of the workforce that you're likely to compete in. Now, a big part of the challenge here is, how do we address this global skills crisis? Because on the one hand, we see some real challenges with many, many people in the workforce today, looking at having their roles automated out and having to find new skill sets. We also see there are lots of individuals who are struggling to get into work because they don't have the skill sets that businesses are looking for. And we see that there are completely new sets of skills profiles, which in many cases are just emerging, and there's still a lack of capability to teach those skill sets around many institutions on the global stage. So the core of this is, how do we actually move that forward? Now, as Coursera, of course, we work with lots and lots of organizations. We have nearly 200 partners in the university space. We have lots of industry partners, 87 million people on the platform, but we work with lots of businesses, lots of government programs that are focused on reskilling workforces, and lots of campus who are really investing in employability outcomes for their students. And so by bringing all of that data together, we have a very good insight into what organizations are looking for, what's needed for people to be successful in their roles. Now, this is something that, as you'll see, we also do a lot of very specific work around Europe. We have 54 university partners in Europe. We have a number of industry partners in there, as well as, of course, the global organizations that we work with in multiple countries around the world. We also have lots and lots of organizations that are partnering directly with Coursera to actually build skills development programs for their employees. And so from that data, we can see what companies themselves are investing in, where are the skill sets that they're trying to actually focus on for their employees, where they try to drive internal mobility, where do they have shortfalls in skills, where they're struggling to recruit, and so on. And we try and collate that data and bring that data into our conversations with our campus partners. And we work with about 4,000 higher education institutions around the world. Many of those have benefited from the free access we provided to Coursera when we were in the early stages of the pandemic, and most campuses around the world had to shut down, and a lot of them utilized Coursera to help serve their students while they were having to make that switch to figuring out how to adapt to online learning. And we see campuses using Coursera in a number of different ways. Quite commonly, there's a focus on, very specifically, employability outcomes. And this can be done as additional content, as electives, as supportive content, to really ensure that students are leaving not just with a robust academic education, but with very specific skill sets that we know will materially improve their chances of securing work and the kind of job of choice when they move into the workplace. The other element, of course, around this is actually helping campuses and universities to deliver their actual content in a way that aligns with their existing curriculum, supporting professors and so on, by actually utilizing Coursera almost as a digital capability, digital textbooks, if you will, to support content that they're working with, contextualize in their world. And we see this in some very specific examples. So one of the very first adopters in Europe of Coursera was the University of Szeged, who has been a pioneer in the way they've utilized online content, actually been a long-term innovator in the world of distance learning, well before they actually started to partner with Coursera. But as an organization, has been very focused on using online learning to ensure that they're providing very flexible, job-relevant learning that allows individual learners to effectively learn at their own pace, in their own time, developing skills that will be relevant for the world of work. And they're very innovative in the way that they deliver that curriculum to their students There are 21,000 students across the campus, but already we've seen 6,500 student enrollments, nearly 20,000 learning hours. And Szeged is actually ranked #1 in Hungary. A lot of that, I think, has come from their innovative approaches to delivering education and their forward-thinking approach. Now, if we look at the global talent, we see that Europe is actually a world leader in many areas of skills. It's also, as a general area, Europe is the third highest number of Coursera learners across the whole of Europe, with nearly 15 million people enrolled in the Coursera platform. We see that 31 out of 35 of the EU countries rank in the top half globally in technical skills, and 32 out of 35 rank in the top half in data skills. But there is still some real significant challenges across the marketplace. Data skills, the pool of people who have data skills capability is very, very scarce across Europe. It's something that companies struggle to recruit for. And so that's something that we see huge demand for that skill set, almost irrespective of the specific role that you want to go across. There's also, of course, very inconsistent profiles of development of skill sets across the marketplace. A lot of the Eastern European countries are generating less in terms of skills competency than perhaps some on the Western side of things. We see different levels of expenditure that is invested into infrastructure, into educational programs. And of course, we see different strengths of business capability. The UK, for example, has often been very strong in the world of finance. Some of that is shifting with the landscape around Europe today. And every country will have its own particular areas of focus, domains of expertise that we as stakeholders who can help influence the lives of individuals and give people opportunities need to focus on to deliver the best possible outcomes contextualized within the market dynamics they face. There is a recognition that competition is becoming more global, and as people can work more remotely, that they can work for any company anywhere in the world. But there are still time zones, local language considerations, and many roles are still blended, which is therefore drives specific in-country dynamics that we have to take into consideration with all of our programs. So if we look at the kind of core trends, we see that the pandemic has both exacerbated and accelerated what was already a very complex landscape around a world of transformational programs. Most organizations are rapidly going through a digital transformation. The education system itself is facing disruption around digital transformation, and individuals having to transform their own skill sets for the future. And those investments in skills from universities, from government, from businesses, and from individuals themselves have the potential to really drive competitiveness, innovation, equity across the market. Online learning that provides access to the world's best content actually is a great leveler around the world. It gives an equality of access to powerful content that can also help universities and institutions expand their reach into students and learning opportunities that perhaps they could never have offered before. And we see across Europe that there are different levels of focus of individuals choosing to engage with platforms like Coursera, which can often be correlated with the market opportunity in terms of their own career outcomes. Coursera, of course, is a platform that is utilized by people at all sorts of moments of career transition. In many cases, they will be looking at role change or job change, both internally and for new roles. Sometimes it's very substantive change. Sometimes it's a little bit more around career progression. But we've seen a real shift in the employee workforce and expectations, which is driving a lot of mobility, or at least openness to consider new opportunities and new roles. And if you look at the enrollments that we have, about half of those are done on mobile. Almost half of them now are being taken by female learners. So we're seeing some very strong gender parity in the online world, and some very strong growth also on the STEM side of things for female learners as well. Where people are learning, again, is probably not surprising in that we see it across the three major domains of business skills, computer science or technology skills, and data science. Health is going to be a very, very significant growth area for jobs as we see aging populations, as we see more and more focus on changes to our health, long-term medications, even fighting challenges such as the pandemic and so on. And within those domains, in terms of our top courses across Europe, we see there's lots of focus on things like machine learning, well-being, looking after ourselves, particularly in a world where lots of people are challenged with the feeling of being overwhelmed by work, a loss of work, and home life boundaries, that blurring of those roles, and the constant kind of fatigue that can come from operating in a very virtual online environment, always been on during that period of time. We see people looking at programming skills and Python skills, very, very common over the last few years. And of course, anything to do with data, finance metrics, basic leadership and management skills, and around things around machine learning, AI, tech, neural networks, and deep learning, always tend to feature very highly in our enrollments. So the question is, with all of this data, what can educational institutions do to actually improve outcomes for their students, but also actually to represent themselves as an organization that is adapting to the current landscape that we see? From an individual perspective, online learning and accepting that there's going to be some fundamental changes from remote work in organizations means that the stakeholders involved in impacting the world of work have an opportunity to actually be involved in not helping just drive the global recovery from some fairly significant recessional impacts around the world, but also do this in a much more inclusive way than has ever been possible before, because it opens up so much more opportunity for people to have an equitable access to educational outcomes. And we have an opportunity to also evolve the way that education has been delivered, recognizing that the world is changing very, very fast in the world of work. It's very difficult to keep up with that level of change, particularly in those high domain, high transformable areas of tech, leadership, and data skills. And by actually looking at how to bring third-party content into a platform which actually complements the in-house skills of an organization, the university becomes an organization which is able to curate and contextualize the content in a way that delivers very, very strong outcomes for individuals. And from an external landscape, my fundamental belief is that education is the greatest single force for good. And I think we all have an opportunity to contribute to that as leading players in that space. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. I hope you had a fantastic event. I look forward to connecting with many of you in the future.